how we act also has to be built on our values. We're going to be judged every day. Everything you do is judged. I used to tell people when I would talk to them about leadership, they'd say, well, you got to lead by example. So some days you really got to lead by example. I said, you're going to lead by example every minute of every day. It's going to be a good example or a bad example. But they're going to watch what you do and they're going to judge you. And that's the way it is with counterinsurgents. Suppose you want to give wheat seed to people in a village, and you get in your big armored vehicles and the roads are kind of narrow, and because you've been taught to protect the force, you got to drive fast, and you got to train your weapons on people because there might be insurgents out there. So you rumble down the road, kick up a bunch of dust, force some farmers to get off the road because there's not enough room for your armored vehicles and them. You rumble up. You've pointed your weapons at people because you're protecting your people. You get to the village and you hop out with wheat seed and you don't understand why they don't love and appreciate your arrival. And then when it's time to leave, because the roads are narrow, you got to do sort of a pull around. You go through the guy's farm field and you take out about 100 square feet of planted crops and you say, yeah, but we gave them wheat seed. Suddenly, you missed the point. So our values have got to be based not just on what we think is right, but what they think is right. If we walk into a mosque with our boots on and we're not Muslims, no big deal. We didn't break any of our religious values, but we did somebody else's. If we go into an operation and we think there are insurgents in a room, and let's say we do go to Abdul Nasser Khan's compound, and his son is there, and his son does have IED material, because his son has been doing bad stuff. And so we go in this compound, and it's easiest to go at night because they're sleeping. We go at night. We violated the sanctity of his compound. We got to search for the ID material, so we go in and we search through his wife's clothing. We're very careful because we've learned this culture. We move her aside, but we search her clothing. We have suddenly dishonored her and him. And we've humiliated him by violating his compound. Even if his son is an insurgent, and people say, well, it was fair to go in there because he was an insurgent. You may not have, it goes back to coin math, you may not have one insurgent in the family. Now you may have 2 or 3. Because they're going to watch our values. Now you got to this is difficult business. There are times you got to go get insurgents out of places. But you have to stop and think, and you have to put our values on the high ground. We've got to be something that people admire. Every once in a while, people talk about counterinsurgency as war in the shadows, and you got to take the gloves off, and you got to do things because this is difficult kind of war, and maybe you got to murder a double agent. No, you don't. You don't murder anybody. In conventional war, you kill a heck of a lot of people, more than you do in a counterinsurgency, and yet we'll talk about moral planes. In a counterinsurgency, it's much more personal. And the values have got to be more obvious because they're watched from up close by the people. If you go into an area and you accept gifts or you accept free things or you don't pay for what you do, what you immediately learn is people can't stop you and they won't even try to. But you will have made a statement and they'll hate you for it. And they'll hate you forever for it. The other thing it does when you come back into our force is it creates a rot. It's corrosive. You do something that you're not prepared to stand up in front of your wife and children later and tell them about, then you shouldn't have done it. Because each of us look and we know that if the moral value of the force starts to lower, that we shouldn't be given the power we've got. People without responsibility and value shouldn't have weapons. And people who do should understand how important that is. And we got to reinforce that every day because everyone says, well, I believe and I'm strong. But suddenly you're in a convoy, you move, you get the word of an IED, you stop, you've detected the IED, you go out, and in the process of clearing that IED, a booby-trapped IED near that kills your best friend or kills 2 privates that you're responsible for. And there are farmers 100 feet away, and you know those IEDs couldn't have gone in unless they knew about it. And so you've got natural frustration because now there are 2 guys out here that you're sure are Taliban and were responsible for those IEDs. And so you want to lash out. And one of them's got a shovel, so he must have dug the IED in. Not necessarily. And they may not have had the choice because we couldn't protect them. If the insurgents were able to come and do it and say, we're doing it, you can't stop us, then suddenly they didn't have a choice to make a right or wrong or to support or not because we couldn't protect them. And so if we let our values weaken out of frustration, out of hatred, out of anything, anger, we've suddenly lost. And it's high ground you can't get back up on.